come to know you more. Please help us to be focused now and be transformed in our discussions and our thinking about you and how you've revealed yourself in your church and in those who would attempt to counterfeit it, and help us to have discernment and understanding. Amen. All righty. Did you do some homework? Did you find out who Rastafari is? Anybody find it out? Remember from last time? No, don't. You can't ask Siri right now. Who's Rastafari? So I jokingly said last week that my students used to always want to know about Rastafarianism. And, just because it's kind of, seems kind of cool, right? It's got Bob Marley and you're smoking marijuana and reggae music and this and that. And so the funny thing about that movement is it's a kind of it came about in the 1930s. It was kind of like a collection of things that came together. Basically, it's a group that primarily coming out of Jamaica that rooted themselves in kind of a lost tribe of Israel kind of motif. And so that's why there's a lot of that kind of language and imagery, whether it's the lion, being the lion of the tribe of Judah, but it kind of had a back to Africa type idea, like let's go back here. We were brought here against our will. This is where we belong. We're in exile. Okay, we're kind of in. We need to go back to where we should be. Kind of like the Israelites theme, right? They're in captivity. They need to come out of that captivity. But then this is where it gets interesting is that they believe that the God, Jah, I think is what they call him, came incarnate to earth, but the person who came incarnate wasn't Jesus. It was the emperor of Ethiopia, who at the time was the prince, and his name was Rastafari. Okay, that was his name before he became the king of Ethiopia. So they thought that he was God come to earth. But this is where it's really interesting, is that Rastafari himself was a Christian. So when he became emperor of Ethiopia, he changed his name, or he took the name, I should say, of Haile Selassie. So you might have heard that name before. It might sound familiar, Haile Selassie. And that name means might of the Trinity. Okay, so this guy is a Christian, and but that didn't stop them from still thinking that he was God and worshiping him. And there's even some lyrics. I don't remember the name of this, what the song is. It's a Bob Marley song, Bob Marley and the Wailers, and he talks about God as a living man. And if you hear it as a Christian, you might think, oh, this is a cool Christian song talking about Jesus. It's not. They're talking about Haile Selassie, right? He thinks that's the one he's talking about. So interesting, some kind of interesting stuff there about Rastafarianism. And there's story, I don't know if you call it legend or, that Bob Marley was baptized and converted to Christianity before he died. Some people say that. Some people refute that, but that'd be kind of interesting if Bob Marley ended up actually becoming a Christian before he died.
We should move on from and get to the Scientology. But one random question, because it sounds adjacent. Did the Black Hebrew Israelites, that group, did they come out of that?
No, it's a similar, but no. Oh, at least not that I know of. Or not like, I don't think directly. Like there was, like I said, it was kind of this like, this broader movement we could say, where there was like religious groups who, particularly in the Black community, had kind of connected up or viewed themselves as being somehow connected up with ancient Israel. And I think there's different variations of that. So, but not to my awareness are they directly connected. I think the Hebrew Israelite movement is a much more modern movement.
It's very new. That's why I was thinking that one would have come from the other. But.
Yeah, and it might have. And there could be a history there that I don't know about. Yeah, or it could be even like indirect. Yeah. So, But, the kids, they like to hear about Rastafarianism and, so do we. They, I always joke and say, it's like, you keep the Bob Marley picture of like the long hair and smoking weed and stuff like that. That looks cooler, right? You don't want like a Bob Marley with like a suit and a short haircut and he's got a Bible and he's like walking to church. That doesn't look as cool on a poster in a college dorm. So we'll probably not beat that old image. All right, so Scientology. What do we know about Scientology? Any? Not much. Something about aliens, something about Tom Cruise. John Travolta, yes. What's that? Healing from Mother Earth? Okay. You Googled one time?
Wasn't that John Travolta movie basically about Scientology?
Battlefield. Yeah, that was a L. Ron Hubbard book, I believe, that they turned into a movie. So Scientology, it's a relatively new religious movement coming out of probably like the anywhere from the 1940s to 50s, founded somewhat kind of debatable by a guy named L. Ron Hubbard. So he's the one that's usually identified as the founder of Scientology. Some say that it was actually some of his followers that officially founded the church. So I don't know if you go back and look at the records of who actually incorporated something with the government. Like it might have been his followers, and then he just kind of came and adopted leadership of it. But it was certainly based on his teachings, though. So if we're going to say there's a founder, it's certainly L. Ron Hubbard. He was, prior to Scientology, he was actually a science fiction writer and a fairly successful one. From what I know, it's not my genre. I don't really know that world, but I guess he was a pretty, a popular science fiction writer, and which of course is going to give rise to some objections later on when you hear about some of the cosmology of Scientology, but there's about, maybe around 1 million or so people that would practice Scientology in the world, more or less. And I think at the onset, we should say that Scientology, when you talk about it being a religion, it's not going to have as much, I guess the word would be theology, as maybe you would like. Okay, it doesn't say a lot about the universe or the origins of man or this and that. It's more of a psychological system, like a practical psychological system. So L. Ron Hubbard had an interest in psychology, or at least let's say the study of the mind. I don't think they would like it if I said psychology, because they actually reject modern psychology and psychiatry, which is why you've seen Tom Cruise kind of get in those little beefs about, I forget who it was that actress? Brooke Shields? Yeah, about postpartum, and they had that kind of, it's because of their views about, psychiatry and medicines and things like that. So to kind of, give a quick little overview of it, the main idea behind Scientology is this. So we are all Thetans. Okay, so that's your kind of spirit, if you will. Now, you have attached to you these things called engrams. Okay? And these engrams are a result of past traumas. And the past doesn't even have to be your childhood. It could be from previous lives. So they do believe in reincarnation. Okay? The body changing over time, but the thetan remaining the same, and these engrams being attached to it. So you might have millions of years, theoretically, of these engrams being attached to your body. Now what happens is when you encounter a situation, you have two sort of competing, I guess, ways of addressing a situation. Your kind of reactive self, and then your more kind of conscious self. And the reactive self is particularly the one that's affected by these engrams. And so the goal of Scientology is to rid yourself of these things so that you can be clear to be a free Thetan who's not being sort of held down and being caused to act in a certain way by these engrams. And you say, okay, now how do I overcome these things? Through a process called auditing. So what you do is you sit down with an auditor and with a machine called like an e-meter, and you kind of hold these I think they're metal, what do we call them? Just things you hold on to, and they ask you questions. And as they're asking you questions, they're monitoring it. And the idea is through this process, you can rid yourself of these engrams, okay? And you go, it's kind of like a hierarchy. Like you kind of pass this level, then you go on, and there's hard charts you can find online where you can see all the way up. And there's you're trying to get to the OT level, the operating Thetan, I believe is what it stands for. And there's levels of that, like 1, 2, 3. I think 3 is the highest, or 1's the highest. I could have flipped those. But when you get there, that's a process of called clearing yourself or going clear. I think there's even a book or a documentary out called Going Clear. That's about Scientology. So there's resources you can see about that, about the beliefs they have. I think it's most popularly known because of how many celebrities have been connected with it, most notably Tom Cruise, who would you say a moment ago? John Travolta, Kirstie Alley from Cheers, Leah Remini. Now, Leah Remini, who was in King of Queens, she left Scientology, and she did a series on A&E, I think, about Scientology. If you want to know, it's a really helpful series. If you want to learn more about Scientology, I'm sure you can find it somewhere. There's like 4 seasons or so, maybe 4 or 5 seasons, and it's a really good mix of their beliefs, but also it's done in kind of like a biographical way. And so each episode has like a different focus of the church and the Church of Scientology. And so I'd recommend that to you. It's just interesting. Okay, I'll pause for a second. Any questions about that so far? Adam?
The way we were defining cult for these purposes was like, I guess, Christian adjacent.
Yeah.
In what way does Scientology have anything to do with Christian?
They really don't. And that's what I mean is we're kind of throwing that in the mix just because it's popular, but it really wouldn't be well, I don't know if it really, I don't know how aware it was when he wrote it. In Kingdom of the Cults, Walter Martin, I don't know if he has anything on Scientology or not. I don't know if it was popular enough yet. It would have existed, but I don't know if it would have been as popular. There might have been a revised version. Maybe I know they did a revised version of that book. Maybe they added a section in on Scientology. I think it just sort of gets thrown in there because it's mostly in America, and it kind of has some quasi, Christian things to it. I mean, a Christian could go into it and maybe think, yeah, this is no different than me going to like a psychiatrist or psychologist. They're just trying to help me overcome some problems in my life. And that's usually how they kind of like get people in. It's more of like a self-help kind of like alternative to psychology, I guess. Instead of going to a counselor, this is what you really need, Adam. You don't need that, and that's been all messed up, and this and the other. This is what's the real problem with you, and then maybe you have a little bit of success early on with it, and you stop smoking, and you get in shape, and you get off drugs, and you get a job, right? And then you're like, man, this stuff really is helping me, and man, if everybody did this would be so great, and they get really jazzed about it, and they in a way kind of there's one of the episodes of in the Leah Remini series is how super excited she was because she thought this was going to change the world. Like this was going to fix the world's problems. If everyone could just follow these principles, then everyone would be off drugs. Everyone would be living a healthy life. And so you see interviews with Tom Cruise. He's very much like it's all like positive. The positive benefits of these things. So that's why I say it's more of a practical psychological system. To me, it seems like to me more so than something saying a lot about the metaphysical world. Now, that being said, when you get to the highest levels, okay, you start to get into a little bit more of the metaphysics. And that's when you get to the stuff about Xenu, okay? And this is where people start to, and there's a there's an interesting interview. I think Leah Remini is on Joe Rogan, and she talks about when she first learned about this. And she goes into a special room, opens up this briefcase, and she reads the story about Xenu, this intergalactic warlord who has control over a certain number of planets, and he basically, because of overpopulation, he brings all of our, Thetans to Earth, surrounds a bunch of volcanoes and blows them up with H-bombs. And so you read that and you're like, whoa, like, yeah, you're like, wow, okay. Now, I want to be careful. I'm not bringing this up to make fun of it. I'm not saying I believe in it, of course, but I'm not going to make fun of it because that's not really an argument against something, right? Because then someone's just going to say the same thing about Christianity, right? So let me get this straight. Like, you believe that a donkey talked to a guy and they had a conversation, right? So that's going to come up today in our sermon, right? And so that people could just dismiss Christianity based on stuff like that. However, it does make then kind of certain metaphysical claims that you could start to ask about, like, okay, is the soul immortal? Has it always existed? Is there a God? There doesn't seem to be like a God creator in Scientology. And so getting into the actual beliefs of it, like metaphysical beliefs, epistemological beliefs, and ethical beliefs, that might be a little bit tougher. Probably the ethics are probably the easiest one to find out about. What do they think about this and this issue and this issue? Yeah. What else? Yeah. It's a great question. So the question was, do they have a corporate gathering, or is it kind of more secret? It is a bit esoteric, meaning by that you learn progressively as you go. So the deeper you get into it, the more you find out about it. I've heard a similar statement from Mormons about it. Like there's certain things you'll find out about the further you get into it. So in that sense, it is somewhat esoteric, and it's very kind of private, individualized. They do have gatherings. I don't know what they call them, but it's not like I don't think it's like a regular thing like this. Like every week we get together and we, they have big conferences. Yeah, there's just videos you can see of them, and I think the president, David Miscavige, I think is his name, usually leads them. And man, yeah, it just looks like it kind of reminds me of like a shareholders meeting, like an Apple shareholders meeting, right? Like it's all about, it's like that crossed with like a pageanty church service, like an Easter church service and a corporate business shareholders meeting. That was the sense that I got. And again, I'm not. That's not to make fun of. I'm saying that's what it looks like to me, right? And so it's talking about what they're doing in the world. And here, look at what the Sea Org is doing. The Sea Org is a group of Christian scientists that live on ships, or I don't know if there's more than one or not. And they just live out at sea, and they sign. I think it's like a billion or a million year contract to work for them. And again, there's episodes in Leah Remini's series all about this. And what's that? I think it's 1 billion years. It's either 1 million or 1 billion. I don't remember. I mean, does it really matter if it's like 1 million or 1 billion? It's a long contract. So yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's great. I think as a Christian, that's a good question. Caleb was saying, if you meet them, are they going to say, yeah, you could do this and be a Christian and stuff? It probably depends on who you talk to, I'd imagine. I think some are going to say, well, probably at first blush, it's going to be like, no, it's something against Christianity, like almost like we kind of accept all faiths can be part of it. I think I've read stuff that said that, hey, it's compatible with, all these faiths. However, it wouldn't take very long to go through it and say, well, you believe in reincarnation. We don't. Like, they're incompatible, right? Do you believe in God creator? Who is Jesus to you? Well, he's a good moral teacher. Okay, well, that's in complete contrast to Christianity. So I don't think it would take very long to see that they're not compatible. However, I think that it's probably not at the forefront of the discussion, right? Is, hey, I need to convert you from Christianity. It's more like, hey, you struggling with stuff? Hey, let's come in. You get problems in life? Everyone's gonna be like, yeah, man, I'm kind of struggling, Hey, you want to try this take this little course we have? It's free. It's kind of a personality assessment kind of thing. And oh yeah, cool, I'll try that out. And again, you get that little taste of it, and they're like, hey, this is kind of helping. It's very practical, very pragmatic, right? And for people whose worldview is not rooted very strongly in arguments and doctrines, you might be persuaded by something like that. If your worldview is held on very loosely, and then you do something and it has a nice practical effect on it, you might just say, well, I'm going with that then. That's working for me. Right? And it might not be till much later that you maybe you read about this other stuff and you're like, whoa, what? I don't know about this, or maybe something comes up between your previous held beliefs and these new ones, and you have to make a choice. It's probably what happens at some point. They come to a head and you have to make a choice. This is my guess. So. But I wouldn't say Christian or Scientology is they're not one of the ones that are really making inroads into Christian circles. Not like Mormonism. Mormonism, I'd say, would probably be the number one sheep thief, kind of, so to speak.
I know this was addressed earlier. How do we categorize Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholicism as cults or not?
I'd say false views, false worldviews, not cults. That's how I would say. It would be weird to say Catholicism is a cult, right? I don't know. Then any, Buddhism is a cult, Hinduism is a cult, right? Now a cult is just synonymous with false worldview. So in one sense, I don't think it really matters, right, if something's a cult or not. Other than we talked about this last week, I think. Other than just the connotation it has, right? And you can sway people's views just by calling something a cult. So we might say that Roman Catholicism, as currently its current state, is maybe an apostate group. So they left Orthodoxy at some point. Right? I don't know when exactly that is. It might be hard to say. There's probably a number of times where there was maybe an official doctrine of the church that many people in it didn't hold to, and it took time to kind of sift out, especially during the Reformation. So from those years, from let's say 500 to 1500 AD, where was the true church? It was there, but it was kind of mixed, and you probably had people that actually identified as Catholic priests who were actually believers, and because certain doctrines that would be contrary to Christianity hadn't developed and popularized. So same with Eastern Orthodoxy. But again, it's just Greg's view. If you call them a cult, I'm not going to argue with you about it. Just might be a little confusing to others, though.
I guess my understanding is of the cult that it's something new, that it's not part of the established religion. For instance, with Mormonism, there's the idea that Christianity apostatized at some point. That was around the time of Constantine. So we need to reconstitute the church, along with something like Scientology that's outside of Christian belief, but it's, I guess they would have their own understanding of it to be an alternative understanding against the mainstream. Since, like, in our circles, we want to say that we are part of the church. And we have this experience over, like, Roman Catholicism. When did that start? It's the Council of Trent, the beginning of something new. Because for a long time, there were doctrines that were not fully articulated in that country, like justification,
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
It seems like New Revelation is kind of part of the cult thing. What's L. Ron Hubbard's, what's like the origin story? Because they're following his teaching, but where does he say he got it from?
Yeah, so when he was a younger man, I think if I remember correctly, he traveled around a lot, and I think traveled to the East and tried to just gather various, just ideas and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, and I think that he got really into, study of the mind, psychology. And I think he would say that a lot of this stuff, it wasn't like it was revealed to him or something. There was no story of Moroni and this and that. I think it's just kind of very practical. This is what I've discovered. This is what I've I forget off the top of my head where the stories of like Xenu and this stuff come from. I don't remember.
Maybe it was like he was the first to go clear and therefore remembered all that.
It could be, I suppose, it could be just, or it could be almost like a Platonic ideal thing, like you rid yourself of the things that are obstructing you, and the knowledge you actually have is able to come out. I don't know, it could be something like that. But I think the other stuff, it's just more practically discovered. And he wrote a very popular book called Dianetics, and I think it was in like the 70s or maybe the 80s. Hugely popular. If you ever saw it, like growing up, I saw it like everywhere. It had the big volcano on the cover, and it was a big, huge, thick book like this. And it was basically like just the science of, mind health, and just, just looks like it's just lumped together with all the other self-help books, But it was very popular. And it took me years to connect why there was a volcano on the cover. And so I was like, oh yeah, well that makes sense with the Xenu story. I'm not sure if that's why they put a volcano up, but I don't know why else it would be on there.
It's a link to the real truth.
Yeah. Easter egg, right? Why is there a volcano on the cover? Oh, we'll get to that. So I think, in terms of, because you'd asked about like how did it develop, just to his teachings, it's very much centered around the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard. And that's where people kind of get a little bit like cynical, because you hear stories like Xenu, you find out this guy was a popular science fiction writer, and you're like, okay, is this just like, this guy's just imagination? But, I don't think that alone is enough to dismiss a view, but it certainly would make you maybe a little bit like, not sure about this.
What would you go after? Like the reincarnation?
Evangelistically? Yeah, I think the thing is like we said before, it's all going to be person-centric. Put it this way, the less theological, for lack of a better term, of a position is or a system is, the more you just go person-centered. Because who knows what this person actually believes about the world, where they came from, what happens when they die, does a God, where did the universe come from, does matter exist, does my soul exist, things like that. And even if a system has that pretty well laid out, I would still be pretty person-centric with this understanding that this is probably where they're coming from. But with something like Scientology, I mean, there's probably not going to be like a unified thing that all these people are going to believe in outside of the stated, psychological benefits and what are the goals and trying to fix the world and stuff. So I just ask the questions, like always. I'll just be a broken record with that. Just ask questions, guys. And that's a great way to like get the ball rolling with someone. Say like, oh, that's interesting. Like I've never met a Scientologist before. Like, and I heard some of the stuff about kind of what you guys believe and kind of like the thetans and the engrams and get rid of those. And, do you mind if I ask you some more stuff? I'm just interested about like, do you believe in like God as a creator? Like did God create, like where did the matter come from? Like has it always existed? And just let them share. And then you can address those particulars, right? Okay, anything else? So if you're interested more in Scientology, I'd say it's either a book or it's a documentary, and I believe it's called Going Clear. That's a kind of a little one-shot thing. There's also the series, again, I think it's by A&E with Leah Remini, who's the actress from King of Queens. Now she left Scientology. So she's coming back and almost doing like hey, I left this, I want to expose a lot of the stuff going on. So it's very polemical, right? She's very much like opposed to it. And with her on the show is a guy, his name's escaping me, he was very high up in the organization. And so they're both speaking against it. It's just an entertaining show, it's interesting to watch, and it gives you a lot of interesting information about it. And they talk a lot about like cults. Now what's interesting too is you're gonna see some things that they say out there that they throw out that you might be like, oh, wait a second, I don't know, because the term cult and what constitutes a cult gets kind of very muddied. Like a lot of places, if there's any sense of, I think what we might call excommunication, that's a cult. It's like that is like one of the essential qualities of a cult. Like if any sense people are treating you different or not talking to you or something like that, you are absolutely definitely in a cult. And while yes, there certainly are parts of that in different groups that we would agree with, we also have, a doctrine of church discipline, right? That we have to figure out what the distinction is there, right? And so I think that, as Christians, for one, church discipline isn't very largely practiced now. So even doing any sort of church discipline screams of like, oh, cult, weird people, right? So I think we need to get clear on, get clarity, on how that looks different for us, right? Than when we're calling someone to repentance. How do you treat them? But I think that when you get into the nitty-gritty, it's quite different. Like we're not, when someone leaves the church and maybe speaks against it, we're not sitting outside their house with signs that say, the guy who lives here is a pedophile, right? And that's the kind of stuff that, at least allegedly, the Church of Scientology does. People who leave, if they start speaking against it, we're going to do these things, and so you quiet. You can leave, you just got to be quiet. Don't say anything. If you start to say stuff, we're going to come at you. A lot of the episodes are about stuff like that. So, all right. Any last questions? I think we're good on time. Yep, good. All right, I think Owen should be back next week, continuing. I'm not sure. I think we still have Jehovah's Witnesses to talk about. That probably would be more traditional with Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian Science. Those are like the traditional like cults coming out of Christianity. So we'll see which ones we're doing. So let's take a little break, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so for service.